What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Inside Inter Miami, the Miami Herald show on all things Inter Miami, Lionel Messi, and his big paycheck. We're back with Michelle Kaufman, our Inter Miami beat writer. I'm Andre Fernandez, deputy sports editor. And Inter Miami continues to be on a roll. But the interesting part was seeing just exactly how much the Messiah makes was pretty. Not. I think we knew it was a lot more than most people, but wow. Is he making a lot, Michelle? How you doing, Michelle? And let's talk about this big salary of his and other people on the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know that, everyone always says Inter Miami has a high payroll. Messi's the highest paid player in the league. But the MLSPA, twice a year, they started a few years ago releasing it for total transparency, and everyone now knows what everybody makes. They release the entire salary list, the base salary, and then the guaranteed compensation, which includes bonuses and signing bonuses and other things, annualized compensation. So they release that twice a year after the different windows close, the trade windows. They then release these lists so everybody can see what everybody's making. And I guess it's good for negotiating tools, obviously, for the next time for the next round of negotiating for everybody's contract. Everyone now sees in public who's making what, who's contributing, and how much are they making. And yes, Lionel Messi alone makes more than the entire payroll of all but three teams in MLS.
Yeah,
So his
not
guaranteed
surprised.
compensation is $20 million, and that is more than all of, except for two teams in MLS, all the other teams combined. It's just, they don't make as much as the entire payroll doesn't make as much as he does. And the only two that make more, the only two teams that have a complete payroll that's more than Messi's paycheck is Chicago and Toronto. Those are the two that actually, not, you wouldn't think maybe that they're the highest profile teams, but they are the two that have shelled out the most money to get
Yeah,
some star players. Um, but the other thing is that Inter Miami as a team, the Inter Miami payroll is 47 million, which is more than well, it's 41 million, excuse me, 41.7 million, which is more than double all the teams except, again, Chicago and Toronto. So
yeah,
pretty much the other teams are spending far less than Inter Miami for this team. Now, like the lowest payroll is St. Louis, which Miami is playing
yeah.
next weekend. St. Louis, their salary is 12 million combined. The
Hmm.
combined payroll is $12 million for the St. Louis team. So what all of this shows us, and when you look down the list at Inter Miami, um, Busi is one of the highest paid players in the league. Sergio Busquets, 8.8 million.
8.8 now.
Luis Suarez and Alba are at 1.5 million. Julian Gressel is in the millionaire club in this team. He is making $1 million. So they have, as far as millionaires go, they have Gressel at a million, Luis Suarez and Alba at 1.5 million, Busquets 8.8 million, Messi 20.4 million, and even somebody like Sergey Christoph, the
Mm.
Ukrainian center back, is making $800,000. So the team is very well paid for the most part. Yes, there are a lot of players still on the roster on the low end of 71,000, which is the minimum. And that is the players who really are developmental players who are not really getting many minutes. The biggest bargain, I would say, on the team, looking over all of the salaries of all the players on the team, the biggest bargain for Inter Miami is Benja Kramashi. Benjamin Kramashi makes 106,000. And he's like, he's starting. He has started 23 or 24 games for this club. And because he's so young, he was signed at 18 years old. He still has a minimal contract like some of those other young players who don't get to play that much. The difference is he is playing a lot. So the next time that he's up for renegotiation for his contract, I am pretty sure that he's going to get a raise.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense because he's at the start of his career, but yeah, they're getting no, it's literally bang for their buck for what they're getting contribution wise from him. And it kind of makes sense. It's like in baseball when these guys come in as prospects and they tear it up, and then they hit that year where they're going to get paid. That's going to come, for Benha. But Messi, 20 million, upwards of 20 million, and that's not even counting what Apple gives them and all these
Oh no,
deals.
that's just for the MLS, right? That's just for his MLS salary. That doesn't include any of his deals with Apple, with Adidas, any of that. And then also he will get equity in this team upon retirement. So his
Right.
total deal when he signed was pretty much, from sources that I know that know, if you know, the sources said that his total package was around 150 million, valued at about 150 million, and that includes equity in this team upon retirement. And the team, obviously, because of him, the team is valued at a lot more because he's now on the team. So when he retires, this team will be worth and valued a lot more than it was when he arrived. So he's going to get equity in a very valuable team upon his retirement. So he's doing pretty well, Mr. Messi. He's doing pretty well in the team.
Yeah, worth
Yeah,
every penny. I think worth
worth
just
every penny.
the colossal impact he's had, on a franchise, on a league. You can see where it's worth it.
Yeah, and on the
But I wasn't
field,
surprised
if
that when
you
you said
look,
the other teams. Yeah, when you said before the other teams, it surprised me like the Galaxy or teams like that weren't among the highest, considering the high profile, the high value those teams have. But I guess they're not as much player spending as Chicago is.
yeah, Chicago and Toronto spent a lot on picking up a few high salaried players from Europe, and those guys cost a lot of money. So as we're
Yep.
seeing here with Miami, that all these guys that they signed are a million and up, and that is, for MLS, those are very, very high salaries. The average base salary in MLS is 513,000. So
Wow.
that's the average base salary. So
This is blowing it
Miami
away.
is Miami's blowing it away, and by the way, they're in first place. So
Right. We
they're
see where
they're
the money's
leading.
going. Right.
The money is going. They're delivering. They're not just being paid, they are delivering. They are the highest paid team, on the salary list. They're on top of the list, and on the standings, they're also on top of
Right.
the list right now. They're leading. Cincinnati's very close, 1 point
Yeah.
behind, but Inter Miami is on top of the Supporter Shield table right now, leading the Eastern Conference with 31 points. So
Yeah.
they're doing very well as a team.
Yeah, that tie with Orlando kind of gave a sliver of catching up to Cincinnati. They narrowed the gap from 3-1, but they've built a pretty good cushion on everyone else in the conference just with all these victories. And like you said, 31 points right now. Michelle, again, we know obviously why, but what a night and day from last year. I mean, last year, 15 games, they only had 15 points.
Yes.
Now what they're doing, and they're up in the stratosphere, and they're building the cushion they need with Copa America looming in a few weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. This team, it took them until week 29 last year to get to 31 points, which is where they are now. It took them to September. They were in September when they had 31 points. So they are basically 15 points up. They have a 15-point cushion, 16-point cushion, actually, from where they were at this point last year. They're 16 points ahead of where they were at this point last year on May 21st. So this is exactly the cushion that Tata wanted at the beginning of the season. He said, this first third of the season is very important. We have to build a big lead because we are going to lose some players in the summer, particularly Messi, but also Suarez could end up going with Uruguay. He was on the preliminary roster. Matias Rojas could end up with Paraguay. And it's possible that Campana will be called up to go with Ecuador for Copa. One thing that they can be happy about, although maybe he's not as happy, is that Drake Callender was not called in for the U.S. camp coming up. And while that is not officially the Copa roster, the Copa roster will not be announced till later. It is not set in stone that those 27 players who were called into camp are the same exact 27 that are going to be the ones considered for the Copa roster. But it's pretty well understood that that is where the Copa roster is going to come from. And Drake, they decided to go with three goalkeepers who had experience from the World Cup and who had more experience than Drake. So Drake came in last, he had an amazing season last year. He worked his way into the camp of U.S. national team. He's definitely on their radar. He's right there on the bubble. But for now, I wouldn't even be surprised if Greg Berhalter spoke with Inter Miami and they said, hey, listen, is this guy going to play? Or if he's going to be sitting on the bench for 5 weeks and not playing with the national team, we really could use him because we're going to be losing Lionel Messi. We may be losing Suarez. We may be losing Matias. We are in first place. We're aiming high for this year to win MLS Cup. And if you're going to take our starting keeper away to just sit on the end of the bench and be the last place keeper, maybe it's better that he stays here and gets experience. So, they have to weigh all of those options. And I think it makes much more sense for Drake to stay here and help this team if he's just going to be sitting on the bench over there and that's not really helping his development much, and it's definitely hurting his club team.
Right. If he was going to get called into action, that's one thing. But yeah, like if he's just wasting his time out there in that sense, at least. I mean, I know he's on the USA team. That's great. But you do want to at least get some minutes in there and be useful. And yeah, it would be a big detraction. I mean, and going back to that, I mean, we know they're going to lose Messi for a while. I'm still concerned about how drastic an impact it does, because look at what just happened. They have the scoreless. Their offense disappears. They have the scoreless draw with Orlando, which cost them a couple points as Cincinnati's chasing them. And very nearly the same thing happened against DC. If Leo Campana hadn't saved the day with that goal, 93 minutes.
Yeah, they went 93 minutes. I mean, they basically went 90 plus without scoring against Orlando and 93 minutes without scoring in this last game against DC. So we're talking about 180 minutes here. 90 of those Messi did play in this game. The Orlando game, he did not play, and the offense was non-existent. When he plays, they were averaging 2.2 goals when Messi plays, and they were averaging 0.018, like less than a goal per game when he doesn't play, 2.2 goals per game when he does play. And the 5 previous games before the Orlando game, the 5 previous games, they had scored 19 goals over 5 games. 19 goals over 5 games with Messi in the lineup. So, he makes a huge impact. And the team is still, by the way, they're on a 9-game unbeaten streak right now. Their last loss was on March 23rd, that debacle rain game, freezing game in New York, against the Red Bulls, that 4-0 game. That is the last time that Inter Miami lost. They have either won or tied 9 games in a row. Messi was in that stretch where they were just killing people with 3 goals, with 4 goals, in the last stretch before Orlando. The Orlando game was tough, was a bit of a wake-up call. And now the DC game, they did survive it. They survived it at the very end. Drake Callender, by the way, had a huge save because they almost scored and they could have almost lost this game. Drake made an incredible save at the end. And then right after Campana comes in, literally his first touch on the ball was a cracker of a goal, his very first touch. And he only got to come in the game because of a concussion situation with another player on the other team, which allowed them an extra substitute. So they were able to have one more sub, and he was able to come in and bam, on his very first touch, he scores. But otherwise, that was a tough situation that they were in with DC. So yes, when Messi goes away, we're looking at right now, Inter Miami has Messi potentially for 3 more games before he goes to Copa, duty with Argentina. And it's not guaranteed. And I wanted to talk about that with you and see what you think, which is there are 3 games left between now and June 1st. All the teams start to report on June 3rd for Copa America. So right now, between now and June 1st, there's a game this Saturday at Vancouver, which is a 7-hour flight all the way across the country. cross into another country. So it's a 7-hour schlep to go from here to there, and they're back. That's this Saturday. Wednesday, they play a home game against Atlanta. So they're going to come back from Vancouver late, arrive, Sunday. Wednesday, they have a game against Atlanta. And then 3 days later, on Saturday, the following Saturday, they have a game against St. Louis on the 1st. So you're talking again about one of these weeks with 3 games in 7 days. One of the games is 7-hour flight away. So what do you do if you're Inter Miami? Does he play all 3 of these 90 minutes to try to amass as many points as you can over these 3 games? Or do you maybe skip the Atlanta home game in the middle? Do you skip the Vancouver trip and stay home? I don't know about that. Or do you play limited minutes in all 3 games? If you were Tata, let's play Tata. You're Tata. What do you do in this situation?
I think I limit him in at least 1 or 2 of these in terms of minutes. But we keep saying it. We keep looking at it from the sport side, and then we forget that as we've talked about before. You said skip the home game, and immediately my first thought is, great, so you're going to disappoint the home crowd by not having them there that one game, And it's like it's such a quandary that to look at it from that standpoint and from the fan base and revenue standpoint and having him on the field and how much that means and all of that. I don't think he plays all 90, all 3 games. He just can't. I mean, the way they've had the load management they've been doing with him and that sort of thing. And going back to the other point about their absences, the only guys that have saved the team with some offense, like a Campana or Luis Suarez, they may be gone too. So at that point, I mean, if your offense is partially or 3/4 non-existent when he's not around, what's going to happen when all 3 or 4 of those key offensive figures are all off the field?
Yeah, I mean, think about this team without Messi, without Suarez. We're just talking hypotheticals. But hypothetically, they could be without Messi, without Suarez, without Campana, and without Matias Rojas. They could be missing potentially all 4 of those for
right. And I
minimum
forgot Matias.
5 games.
Matias is unbelievable. Matias is unbelievable.
With Paraguay.
What a great player. I mean, what a great young player. So I forgot him too.
Yes. So he is, he has played for the Paraguayan national team. He is definitely, I would assume, going to be called either for Copa or for Olympics or something. I mean, I just think that he's a guy who's national team level, absolutely, for Paraguay. So if you're losing all of those guys or some of those guys, and potentially during Copa, we're talking about, depending how far each team goes, we're talking about potentially 5 to 7 games. The Copa ends on July 14th. It goes from June 20th to July 14th, and they start in camp, like I said, around June 3rd, June 4th. So you're missing potentially Messi for 7 games. And some of these other guys, potentially, even if they just play in the group stage, players are probably going to miss 5 Inter Miami games, and then potentially 7, depending how far these teams go. So, and Uruguay, by the way, is one of the favorites too. I mean, Argentina is very good. Uruguay is also very good. And it remains to be seen if Suarez is called up for the final roster. He's on the preliminary roster. He was not called in for their last, they had a camp where he was not called in last year. But the way he's playing right now and the role Luis Suarez is on a scoring streak right now, except the last 2 games. But there's been no pistolero last 2 games. But he's been playing incredible. He's really been rejuvenated. He really seems rejuvenated. He was scoring just at an incredible clip. And so if you're the Uruguayan national team, you've got a guy who's one of the best finishers of this generation, and he's rejuvenated. He's happy. He's playing well. And he would play a leadership role for the younger players on the Uruguay national team. Even if he doesn't start, let's say even if they choose not to start him, you're talking about a guy with so much World Cup experience, so much national team experience. Why not bring him in for your roster? So it's, Inter Miami could be losing a big chunk for 5 to 7 games. So that is why this next stretch what do you do with Messi?
Well,
Does he go?
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
What do
go
you
ahead.
do? I mean, I don't know.
I
I agree with you.
yeah,
I don't
I
think he
can't
should
see it.
play 90 of all three. I don't see him
No,
playing 90 minutes all three. Um, and again, the home games, yes, the season ticket holders, they're paying a lot of money. They're paying double. Every single season ticket holder,
seems like
including
even
my
more.
husband,
Yeah,
is paying double what they
prices
were
are.
paying last year.
Mm,
And whether you're in the cheapest seats or the most expensive seats, this year's seats cost double because of Messi, the Messi effect. So if you're paying those big dollars, you expect to see Lionel Messi. If you're paying for his presence on the team, you're
exactly.
expecting to see him.
No,
One thing they
yeah,
did do this week for the season ticket holders, the season ticket holders have been a little bit salty, a little bit salty about the fact that they do pay so much more than the average fan pays to see this team play. And they have not really gotten too many perks for that type of investment. Messi has missed games that they paid for. They also were hoping for some, season ticket holder events, some events where if you're a season ticket holder, you are going to get some exclusivity. You're going to get some events where you're going to maybe get a meet and greet. You're going to maybe get to take a picture with Lionel Messi. We talked
right.
last week with the leader of Vice City about that, about how he was pretty disappointed that they haven't even had 1 minute, one moment to even take like a group picture with Messi. Vice City, these other supporter groups that they put in, a lot of time and effort to support this team, and they are singing rain or shine 90 minutes plus every game with their drums, with their smoke bombs, with all of their stuff, and traveling and going on caravans to Orlando and to Atlanta, and they haven't gotten any time with Messi. So one thing they did this week, the club had on Tuesday night was an open training session for season ticket members. It was an open session at night, Tuesday night, for season ticket holders got to go. And that's something that the average fan did not get to go attend, which is an open training session. See the players, you're not on the field with them, but you're getting to see something that's a little bit behind the scenes. So they did do that. But yes, I agree that if Messi were to not play next week in the games that people have paid for against Atlanta and against St. Louis, people would be disappointed. So maybe you just measure his minutes in these three games and he doesn't play all three. Maybe he doesn't start, bring him off the bench, see how the team is doing, see how the team is doing and bring him off the bench. Oh, I don't hear you.
Sorry. What we keep saying, we can technical glitch.
I left you
We
speechless. I left you
You left me
speechless with
speechless.
all of my
It's the
discussion.
it's
Speechless.
everything. I'm still blown away by that contract. If I could only have
That's
like
right.
1,000th of it, I'd be happy. But anyway, but the point being that what they can control in terms of how much they play him and all that. But what about on the flip side when he's playing and they're going all out for Argentina? There's not going to be a load management in the Copa America. They're going to need him on the field the entire time, trying to win for their country. Same goes for Suarez if he plays for Uruguay and Campana, Ecuador, and so on and so forth. That to me, big picture, is a little concerning too, because what if something happens when he's playing in Copa America? I mean, it doesn't even have to be anything severe, but the wear and tear of that too, right smack in the middle of the season. How fit of a Messi
Well,
are you getting back on the back end of that?
we know what happens. We know exactly we know what
Right,
that looks like because
right,
that happened last year. This team
right.
was rolling. This team won Leagues Cup, rolled through that tournament like nobody's business. Everyone was like, oh my God, is anyone going to be able to beat Inter Miami? This team is unbeatable. This is incredible. They went and beat LAFC on the road in front of all the celebrities. All the celebrities from LA had come out to that game against LAFC and they won 3-1 that game. They looked incredible. Right at that point, Messi went and reported to the Argentine national team to play in early September, and boom, he got injured. He got injured over there, and the team went down the toilet. The team was never the same. He missed 7 games. Again, 7 games without Messi. We saw what happens. 7 games without Messi. Now, that team last year didn't have Luis Suarez. It did have Busquets and Alba. It did not have Luis Suarez, and he's been a huge. I mean, he's he's like right on top there for the Golden Boot award. So they've added to Lionel Messi a Golden Boot candidate in Luis Suarez. So Luis Suarez was not here last year. If he had been here in September and October of last year, even without Messi, they may have still made the playoffs. They didn't have him. They didn't have Matias Rojas. They didn't have some of these other players that they've added, Julian Gressel. They've added some pieces this season that they did not have last season. Now they did also lose some players. They lost Yedlin, they lost Kamal Miller, they lost some good players. But they gained some good players this year too. So, but we have seen that when players go for national team duty, and they are going all out, because when they wear their national team shirt, it means a lot. Not that it doesn't mean a lot for them, their pink and or Miami shirt. This is where their salary's coming from. But they have national pride. It means so much for them to be called up to the national team, whatever country you're from. There is no greater honor than being one of the 23 that is called up for your country. You're representing your country. You're one of 23 athletes in the entire country who was called in. So you're going to go all out. You are not going to be saving yourself. There's not going to be any load management during Copa America to preserve yourself for the resumption of Leagues Cup and MLS season, which comes after. Don't forget Leagues Cup, which comes right after Copa America, and then the resumption of MLS. So there's a lot to go after Copa. What happens during the month of June and July if these guys are making a deep run? Let's say it's Uruguay against Argentina in the final rounds there, and they're both in the final rounds.
Oh my
You've
God.
got the top two scorers. The top two scorers in the league, basically two of the top three with Benteke, two of the top three scorers in the league will be playing in Copa America. Well, Benteke is not. He's going to be out there still scoring for MLS and DC United. But those guys are going to be playing for their national team, and they're going to put their heart and soul into those games. And you have to hope and pray that they don't get injured. And yes, even the wear and tear, even if they don't get injured, but the wear and tear, when they come back, are they going to be ready to just boom, go out there and do 90 minutes, 4 days later or something? No. And God forbid if they get injured. If they get injured, we saw what happened last year when they got injured. And by the way, Federico Redondo, his injury also, which we're going to talk injuries in a few minutes, but Redondo's injury also came during Argentina national team duty with under 23. So
there you go.
Players go for national team duty, and sometimes they get injured, and they come back to their club teams injured. And then it's the club's responsibility to do all the rehab, and then the club is the one that sacrifices and loses.
Inherits the mess.
Inherits the mess. Yes.
But it let's be real. Leagues Cup and all this, yes, it has some importance, but not like La Patria, not like La Bandera, what you're really playing for, when it comes to country. I mean, and so you understand why they go all out, but at the same time,
and for Messi, and for Messi, Argentina especially, they are the defending champion. They're the defending World Cup champion. They are the defending Copa America champion. They want to win. They want to win this thing. They want to defend. They want to defend their title. And not only that, this could be Messi's last. This is potentially, probably
legacy.
Messi's last Copa America. Yeah, he doesn't want his last Copa America to be a losing one. He wants to win this thing. This is his last one. This is the last hurrah with Copa America, probably. So even though he is a superhero and who knows what he's going to do in the future, but if you're realistic, this may be his last one, potentially his last one. He's going to want to win. And by the way, Suarez is 37. Messi will be 37 in June too. So, when this tournament starts, you're going to have two 37-year-old legends who happen to both play for Inter Miami, happen to be two of the top scorers in MLS at 37. Both of them probably playing their final Copa America for their team, for their national team. They're going to go all out, both of those guys.
Wait a minute. Didn't we? Wasn't it a few months ago that there was a match that was being billed as the last dance, and it never happened?
Oh yes.
Well, how about in Miami? How about in Miami, a last dance of sorts between Messi and Suarez in the final at Hard Rock Stadium. Wouldn't that be something?
That would be
Last Dance
incredible.
wearing those uniforms at least.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. A Brazil-Argentina final would also be amazing. But yes, the two teammates and best friends going up against each other in a final round, even if it's in a semi or whatever, to see Messi against Suarez, the Inter Miami guys going up against each other. And if it were to be in Miami in a final, it would be unbelievable. But yes, those two guys are going to go all
I'm
out
dreaming
in
big,
this
Michelle. I'm
tournament.
going like Jorge Mas. I'm dreaming big, Michelle.
Dream big. It's going to be epic, epic. He always used to tell me it's going to be an epic summer last year, which it was. And this summer could be an epic summer for the national teams of Argentina, Uruguay, it's going to be a fun tournament. I mean, Copa America, for people who don't know or people who are just becoming interested in soccer and whatever, Copa America is huge. It is it's the World Cup of South America, and this year thrown in the United States, Mexico, Canada, Panama, Jamaica, Costa Rica. So, it's, by the way, speaking of Costa Rica, I wanted to throw this in here. There's been, Drake Callender had an incredible year last year, just lights out, unbelievable. Like we said, was called into the national team. He made a couple of mistakes, this season so far, costly errors. However, he also still made a lot of really big saves during all these games this season. But because soccer fans are how they are, there were already people saying, oh, Callender, he's not what he was last year. Maybe it's time to make a change. Time to pull the plug on Drake Callender, one of the top goalies in the United States, one of the top keepers, being, considered for the U.S. national team out of the short experience that he has at his young age. People were already ready to pull the plug. So the last few press conferences with Tata, there's been questions about, oh, by the way, there's some rumors going around the world of different keepers, different keepers that are available, that are going to be available this summer. Do you think that maybe, is there any chance that we're going to have a change? Is there any chance that Keylor Navas would come, the Costa Rican keeper who's with PSG? We're hearing rumors, Tata, that maybe you're looking at Keylor Navas to come to replace Drake Callender. And he shot that down. Tata shot that down and said, listen, he's a great keeper. There's no question. We already know. Everyone knows what a level keeper he is. He's playing for PSG. He's done great things for Costa Rica. But right now, first of all, the transfer window is still 2 months away. Number two, we are not looking for a replacement right now for Drake Callender. We have all the faith in Drake Callender. He's one of our co-captains. And by the way, the last interview with Tata where he talked about Drake was before about these rumors, was before the game against DC. And Drake made a game-saving save in the final minute there, where he made a save that they should have scored on that. They should have scored, DC. And because of Drake, he made an incredible world-class save. They kept them in the game. And then Campana was able to score. They would have tied. If they had scored and then Campana were to have scored, they would have tied that game. They would have not have gotten 3 points. So
They're
Drake
still in
Callender
first
is still
place.
doing.
They're still in first place,
Yes.
thanks to him.
Yeah, they're still in first place thanks to that save that Drake made. And everyone is talking about the Campana goal, which was a beautiful goal on his first touch. That is hard to do, to come in cold off the bench and on your very first touch to score the way he did. But you saw how he ripped off his shirt. He got penalized for that. But he was so excited because who comes off the bench? It looked like he wasn't even going to play in that game. He was going to go back to the locker room with a clean shirt, with a clean shirt and with nothing. And he comes in and on his first touch scores. But let's not forget the heroics of Drake Callender at the very end of that game. And according to Tata, we were talking about Costa Rica being in Copa America. According to Tata, at least right now, there is no discussion with the Costa Rican keeper. There's no discussion to replace Drake Callender at this point anyway. So he wanted to make that clear.
Oh, keepers get grief kind of like quarterbacks do. I think all the time it's like the highs and
Yes.
lows. I mean, I remember Tim Howard used to get the highs and lows when he had great performances or struggled a little bit. I used to always remember that with the USA team, and so it comes with the territory. But
You
like I
get a
said,
lot of the
I think
blame. They
Drake will
have
be
to have
fine.
very thick. Yeah, they have to have
Yeah,
very thick skin because you get the blame.
absolutely.
The truth is, if the ball gets by a goalkeeper, it's already gotten by 10 other of their teammates. So
Right,
the reason it
especially
got
in
to
that.
that point is that it got past 10 other people before it got to him.
Yep.
But the keeper always takes the blame, but doesn't get quite enough credit on some of the games that they do save. So we're going to give a shout out to Drake Callender today.
All right, well, let's transition and wrap this up by talking about that injury report. Who's out, Michelle? Who's making this a long as heck flight to Vancouver for that late night Saturday night tilt with the Whitecaps up there? The Whitecaps, who are fighting for playoff position. I know we're still very early in the season, but they're kind of like on the fringe out west. So another opponent that everyone's gunning for Inter Miami. So another one that'll be hungry at home to beat them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the biggest injury report is a very bad one, which is Nico Freire. Nico Freire, they just announced on Monday that Nico Freire is probably out for the whole year, for the whole rest of the year. He had an ACL tear, is undergoing surgery on his knee, and he is lost for the year. And that's really a shame because he's a center back that was finally, finding his groove. The four guys in back were starting to gel. We had talked earlier in the season how it was just a rotating, patchwork back line. They were doing 5, they were doing 4. This guy was coming in, Noah Allen, whoever, they were bringing players in and out, in and out. They really finally had sort of settled on a back 4, and all from Argentina. Well, 3 Argentina and 3 Argentina and Jordi Alba being back from Spain. But so they had really settled on a back line and they were playing well. Like, they did have a clean sheet against Orlando. And, that is something that they had not had since the very beginning of the season. They had not had a clean sheet. So, and this last game too, they were able to sustain DC. Benteke was coming off, this guy had a hat trick. He'd had 2 hat tricks, I believe, this season. So this is a guy who's definitely can score, and they were holding him down. So the Miami back line had been doing much better the past few games, and now they lose one of the key components of that back line, Nico Freire, to a knee injury, probably for the whole rest of the year. He's going to be out. The good news is that Ian Frey, who happens to be a center back, a rising talent, he hasn't, unfortunately, he's had the worst luck of in 37 years of sports writing. This poor guy has had just horrible luck with his knees, and we have to really hope that he can finally get to play and develop as a center back for this team, because he has shown in the few games that he's played and the little time he's played, this is a guy who has incredible potential. He's a local guy. He has played so hard, and he's really a very, very good talent. But he's had knee problems. He's had knee problems, back-to-back ACL surgeries. But he is expected to return this week, probably for Vancouver. If not, for Atlanta next week. But he played for the second team this past game and played well. So don't be surprised, especially with Freire out, if Ian Frey now comes in and gets some minutes, and they maybe get to start using him. And then the other one is Fede Redondo. His knee injury kept him out of a bunch of games. He's been out for 2 months with a knee injury, and he's a guy who came in and was having a huge impact right when he came in the first few games, playing alongside Busquets, playing great. He's been out for 2 months. He, according to Tata, is expected back either for the Vancouver game, if not for the Atlanta game next Wednesday. So they're getting back Ian Frey and Redondo, which are 2 very, very good players that they'll be getting back. However, they're going to be losing Nico Freire, which is a really big loss, and I just feel horrible for him because he also is a good guy.
Yeah, it's a shame. And I was going to say earlier, it's ironic. We kept talking about the lack of offense when Messi's not around, but they finally had figured it out, seemingly, at least for 2 matches on the defensive end. They blanked Orlando, and right when they needed it most. And that's a component that obviously is going to be even more paramount going forward when those guys aren't there. They're going to have to, they're going to have to pitch their way to wins instead of hit their way to wins in a way. And in soccer terms, just shutting teams down, and losing Nico is a tough gut punch for this team, especially right now going into this stretch pretty soon.
Yeah. They're approaching a challenging stretch now. They've had this incredible fun streak of scoring 1 million goals, and everyone is so excited and climbing on the table. And now the question in this part of the season, the June-July part of this season is going to be very important for this team. How can they sustain the lead? Can they stay on top, or at least stay in second place up there with a battle with Cincinnati through this stretch with the players that they're losing, with losing Nico Freire? Will their defense be able to sustain? And like you said, the past 2 games, they basically had almost 2 shutouts for 180 minutes of not giving up a goal, is something that this team had not done in a long time. So their defense had definitely picked up. We're going to see who fills in now for Freire with this stretch. Tata is going to have some interesting coaching dilemmas about who to play, minute management. All of these things are going to be very, very important in this next stretch coming up. So we're going to have to stay tuned and see what happens over these next few games through June 1st. And then after June 1st, this will be a different team. We'll see who they exactly lose and who stays. And then we'll be able to see what they do in the June-July window. A lot of soccer
as
left.
Michelle said, oh yeah, definitely a lot of it. And as Michelle said, stay tuned to that. Stay tuned to us, because we will be back next week with another episode of Inside Inter Miami. Michelle and I will be talking about the trip to Vancouver. And remember, catch all of her work at MiamiHerald.com. She's going to have you all covered through the rest of this season and Copa America. I'm hoping to jump in on some of that myself in the next month or so. But thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for watching. Remember, you can catch us on YouTube or at MiamiHerald.com. And if you're listening to us, can't watch us, Spotify, iTunes, all your favorite podcatchers have the show. And thanks once again for watching us on Inside Inter Miami. A few pistolero moments for Michelle, even though they're not happening on the field right now, but we'll see you next week.
We need some Messi, some pistoleros, some Messi pointing to the
let's
sky.
See how much of this.
Abuelita.
Yeah. Let's see if there's one of these up in Canada this weekend or not. We'll find out. But until then, thanks for joining us, everybody. For Michelle Kaufman, I'm Andre Fernandez. We'll see you next week.